Hello everybody, my name is Squaggy and this is Deck Inspection. Here in Deck Inspection, I'm going to give you an overview of the deck. Then I'm going to give you a showcase match, and finally we'll do some reflections on where I think the deck stands in the current metagame. Today, we're going to be inspecting Liael Draconis.
運命の翼未来よりここに聖なる時の運命者リエル・ドラコニスにライド
Liael Amorta came to us as the 7th secret FATED one in DZBTO2 alongside Blankdemeyer and Zorga, used by Erika Myojo in the anime. The deck revolves around a time theme, using Liael to bind a unit on your board, and called the same one from the deck, alongside its divine skill which allowed it to write another Liael from the drop zone. The deck was not great, but thanks to the new DZBT10 giving us a new Liael in the form of Liael Draconis, the deck has gotten a second win alongside some new support. So, let's inspect. With the help of some friends and looking at community consensus, I've come up with this build that should give you a good idea of what the deck can do. To start, we're on Liael's Right Line from DZBTO2. When written over, Adorphus lets you Soul Blast 1 to draw 2 cards, then discard a normal unit from your hand or 2 non-normal units. This lets you dig for pieces and shield, but you have to know what to discard and to keep your normal unit so that you can discard it for Adorphus. Then, when Elegenia is written over, you can choose any number of normal units in your drop zone and put them back to the bottom of your deck, drawing a card if you chose 3 or more. Keep in mind, you only need to choose 3. Even if you pick right deck cards that can't go back to your main deck, you can still draw the card as long as you've hit at least 3 cards. Finally, we have Liael Draconis. She reads that you can Energy Blast 4 and bind a normal unit from your drop or board. Then, you can discard a card and gain +1 drive. Now, I know this cost seems quite steep, but honestly it's not so bad. 4 energy will not matter too much because the game will end before it becomes too big of a strain, and we can compensate our discards with some of the cards in our deck. At most, these just affect how we build the deck rather than being too detrimental to our game plan. Then, when she attacks, you can counterblast 1 and bind a unit on your field to call 1 from your deck to the board with the same name as anything in your bind zone. This is a major improvement from the original, which had to call what you bound, and since you have a second way to bind with Liael's new drive gaining skill, your deck becomes much easier to access. This is also one of the best ways to multi-attack, filtering a card from the deck in the process to increase trigger chance. Finally, we have her divine skill. Apparently, I do have newer players in my audience, so I'll recap that the divine skill is something that you can use once per game. So once per game, you can ride a Liael from your drop or soul as stand during the battle phase and set its drive to 1. This lets you reuse her on-attack skill, making 6 attacks and 4 drives in a turn. You can also ride any Liael, meaning also the old one, which we are on. The old Liael isn't super relevant in terms of unit text, but it does have a special ability. When it's put on the Guardian Circle, you can return 2 cards in your bind zone to the bottom of your deck and then discard a card to nullify the attack on your Vanguard. This helps you reuse the cards in your bind zone while perfect guarding and also isn't considered a sentinel, playing around guard restricts like Blankdemeyer. More importantly, this card is searchable, but we will get to that later. It may be a bit excessive to run 8 perfect guards, so I'm on 4 of her and 3 real perfect guards, but you can adjust your ratios to what you think is right. Next, we're on 3 Gabrielius. Gabrielius reads that when you place him, you can Soul Blast 1 to check the top card of your deck and place it at the top or bottom, and if it's at the bottom, it gains 5,000 power. Then, when you attack with Gabrielius, if you're at 4 or more damage, you gain another 5,000 power, and if he was placed by your Vanguard skill, you can have it gain 10,000 power instead and drive check with a counterblast. This is assuming you haven't already done it this turn. Gabrielius is pretty good, elevating your divine skill to 5 drive checks and improves your trigger chance, but I found him quite middling in early scenarios, so I've put him at 3. However, there are many times where I wish he was at 4, since if he's stuck in damage or so, it's hard to bind him to get him into rotation for the kill turn. For grade 2s, we're on 4 Sequence Wizard. When he's placed, if your Vanguard is Liael, you can counterblast to check the top 5 and call 1. Also, when you bind a unit on your board, he gains 5,000 power and can soul charge 1. This card is really good in Draconis, since he becomes a consistent soul engine and is a meaty attacker if you bind a unit from your board with Liael's skill, becoming a 20k before your opponent hits grade 3. Then we're on 4 Religiel. Her skill reads that when you place her, you can Soul Blast 1 to check the top 7 cards of her deck and add any Liael or Gabrielius to your hand. This means Persona Rides, Perfect Guards, and Gabrielius are all searchable. She also works when she's placed on the battle phase, so keep using her with Liael's binding skill to find Perfect Guards, or Persona Rides. She also gains another 5,000 power if you have a Liael Vanguard and 10,000 power if Gabrielius is on your board or bound. Then we're on the Ace unit. While the Energy Blast 3 to call 1 off the top 7 may seem like a deep sink, especially with Energy Blast 4, you can just use him going second, or use him if you know you have the new Elmoth in rotation. he can find your units and build boards, and then you can bind him to call anything else from your bind zone. Speaking of Elmoth, when she's placed, you can energy charge 1 by showing a Liael, and if your opponent is a grade 3, after she boosts, you can move her to the soul to give your front row rear guards 5000 power. I've seen a lot of lists on the JP side run her in smaller quantities, but I think she's good enough at 4 to justify. Then we are on 3 Dissection Angel, who after boosting can Soul Blast 1 and retire herself to draw, gaining 2000 power when your opponent is grade 3, and when your drive check shows a trigger, you can Soul Blast 2 to countercharge 1 and give herself 5000 power. If she's behind your Vanguard, she can make guarding the Vanguard real tricky, and you can squeeze your way out of weird counterblast scenarios. We're also on 1 Is-Tier, who restats if the unit in front of it is bound by Liael. She's nice for late game power, but we're only on 1 since early she's just okay, and she is surgible off the ton of top 5 and top 7s you have. Speaking of top 7s, we're on 3 of this Nebula Knight's Order. The only effect that matters for this card is that we can bind it from our hand or drop zone and call a unit of the top 7 cards. Not only does this build a board, but being played from the drop means it can be discarded for Liael's skill and can speed up the cards in your bind zone for Amorta's cost. Finally, we're on 3 PGs and also 5 Regalis as our Regalis piece. For triggers, we're on Red OT, 8 crit, 3 draw, and 4 heal. You could probably run frontal with draws, but I like the draws because the early game can be rough, so this mitigates some of that. Okay, let's let time rewind and see what Liael can do. This time, I'm gonna showcase 2 games as a treat. Our first game is up against Liael Odium because I wanted to show what the deck can do against an aggressive strategy going first, and also because I thought a Liael on Liael game would be quite cute. We're gonna start Amorta for ride and pass the turn, then they're gonna draw discard fire Regalis for ride, and then they're gonna set the Destined Timepiece, then they're gonna draw a card of the grade 0 skill. Following which, they're going to call the new card in Odium. That being Tickdown Dragon. With Tickdown Dragon skill, they're going to Energy Blast 3 and check the top 7 cards of their deck, and they're going to add any grade 3 to their hand, that being Distorted Bane. They're going to call 2 Philias here and put the pressure on and swing for 21. We're not going to guard that, obviously. They're going to drive check and they're not going to drive check a trigger. We're going to check damage trigger. They're going to draw a card of Philia. We're going to take this next one too, and they're going to draw another card of Philia. Not off to a great start. Still, there's a lot of game left to play. We're going to discard Liael, and then with a Dorfa skill, we're going to Soul Blast 1, we're going to draw 2 cards, and we're going to discard a normal unit, that being our Amorta. We're going to swing for 18. Check a draw trigger, then with Dissection Angel skill, we're going to Soul Blast 1 and draw another card. Now we have some guard in our hand. They're going to ride up to grade 2 and they're going to put a card from their hand to their gauge and they're going to draw 2 cards off of that. Then they're going to call Takedown Dragon, and with Takedown Dragon skill, they're going to add an Draconis Dragon to their hand. Right afterwards, they're going to use the 5 Regalis and they're going to call Leminar from the top 5 cards of their deck. Going into their battle phase, they're going to call Instant Asunder Colossus and put a card to their gauge. They're going to swing for 18. They're going to check a Liael, we're going to check no trigger, we're going to guard this 10k, and then we're going to guard the 18k coming in next. This puts us at 3 damage going into Liael Draconis. We're going to discard the order, and with the skill of our grade 2, we're going to put back an Amorta, and we're going to put back a Liael to our deck and draw 1 card. We're going to call Sequence Wizard, and with Sequence Wizard skill, we're going to look at the top 5 and call a Dissection Angel. Then from our drop zone, we're going to play the Nebula Knight's Order, bind it, and look at the top 7, and we're going to call our Elmoth to the board. Next, we're going to call Liael and Soul Blast 1 and check the top 7 cards of our deck, and we're going to find a Gabuelius and add it to our hand. But we're going to call this Gabuelius now so that we can bind it for Liael Draconis' skill by Energy Blasting 4, and binding a card on our field and discarding a card, allowing us to Soul Charge 1 and gain 5000 power to Sequence Wizard. We're going to swing for 20,000 with Liael, which will get guarded by Critical Trigger. We're going to use Liael Draconis' skill here, and we're going to call another Liael from our deck. With Liael skill, we're going to Soul Blast 1, and we're going to look at the top 7 cards, and we're going to add Liael Draconis to our hand. Then, with Sequence Wizard skill, we are going to be able to Soul Charge 1 and gain 5000 power to itself. Our opponent's going to declare no guard. We're going to check a heal, giving 10,000 to Sequence Wizard and recovering 1. We're going to check the Ace unit, then a Critical Trigger, giving 10,000 power to Liael and gaining a crit. My opponent's going to check a heal trigger as well, giving 10,000 to the Vanguard, and a critical, giving 10,000 to the Vanguard. Okay, all's fair. Misordered here, but I Soul Blast 1 to draw a card of Dissection Angel, and then swing a Sequence Wizard, which gets guarded by Leminar, followed by trigger to guard on Liael. With that, the tempo is back on our side. My opponent's going to ride into Liael Odium here, and then they're going to call the new Tickdown Dragon one more time. I hope you are not tired of seeing this card on the board. They're going to Energy Blast 3, check the top 7 cards of their deck, and they're going to put a Distorted Bane into their hand. They're going to play Distorted Bane, drawing a card and Soul Charging 1, and then they're going to call a Draconis Dragon before moving to the battle phase. Instant Asunder attacks for 28,000, and they're going to draw a card with its Soul Blast 2 skill, and we're going to no guard it, checking a Gabuelius. Next is Odium Swing. They're going to bind Instant Asunder Colossus, and we're just going to perfect guard that. Don't need to play around here. They're going to check a front, and they're going to check a Philia. Next, my opponent's going to swing 41,000 with their Anachronist, and we're just going to take that to put ourselves at 4 for Gabuelius' skill. We'll Persona right here, and then we're going to bind the Nebula Knight's Order from our drop zone and check the top 7 cards and call a Dissection Angel to our back row center. Then with Liael's skill, we'll Energy Blast 4, discard a card, and bind a unit from our drop zone so that we can gain triple drive for the turn. We know our opponent has a Persona ride in their hand thanks to their drive checks, and we also know that Liael Odium's Divine Skill turn is going to be really difficult to guard, so we're going to try and kill them right here. We're going to swing 38,000 with Liael, which my opponent is going to take and not check a trigger. I mess up the ordering here, but Elmoth should move to the soul to give my front row 5000 power. Liael then swings for 33, calling Gabrielius from our deck. Sequence Wizard skill is going to activate here, and we're going to soul charge a draw trigger, and then after that it's going to gain 5000 power. Then Gabrielius' skill will activate, checking the top card of our deck, putting Istir to the bottom. The attack is PG'd, and we're going to triple drive here into Liael, PG, so I guess we have insurance for next turn. Dissection Angel will draw us a card here, and then we're going to use the Divine Skill to rewrite Draconis from our drop zone. Since we are at 4 damage, Gabrielius will gain 10,000 power and a drive check on this swing, which my opponent will not be guarding. We're going to drive check a critical trigger, giving the power to our Vanguard and critical to Gabrielius, and that will be the game. You can see here that their hand is a bunch of grade 3s because it is all tick down dragon procs. So that's what our deck can do going first. But what about going second against one of the best decks in the format? Our second match is up against Toys, and we are going to go second. My opponent is going to discard Block Horse for Ride and ride into the Nutcracker. With the Nutcracker skill, they're going to search their deck and add the Toys Are Made for Children order, adding it to their hand, and then they're going to put it in the order zone, using its skill to check the top 5 cards of their deck, finding a Bravey Lost and Block Horse. Bravey Lost will go to their soul, and Block Horse will go to their hand. On our turn, we'll discard Draconis and ride, drawing a card, then we'll call Dissection Angel and swing for 16. Our opponent is not going to guard that, we're going to check a Liael, then we're going to use Dissection Angel's skill and draw a card. Now it's my opponent's turn. They're going to discard another Block Horse for Ride, and they're going to ride into Coastal Shark. With Coastal Shark's skill, they're going to add Toys Are Made for Children to their hand and play it, putting Bravey Lost to their soul and putting a Bunny to their hand, who's going to hop out of their hand and onto the board. With Bunny's skill, they put another Bunny to their soul, then they're going to call one Philia and then use the 2 orders to rest themselves and put a Block Horse back to their soul. They're going to swing with their Vanguard, which we will guard with a trigger, of which they will check a front, and we're just going to take 31,000 here. We cannot guard that. They're going to draw a card of Philia and pass it back to us. We'll discard Dissection Angel to ride up to grade 2. We're going to use our grade 1 skill to Soul Blast 1 and then draw 2 cards, discarding Gabrielius from our hand. We're going to call our Ace Unit of our Ace Unit skill. We're going to check the top 7 cards of our deck and call Sequence Wizard. Then we're going to call Elmoth, giving +1 energy to ourselves, and then we're going to call Dissection Angel back row center. Sequence Wizard will swing. They're going to use a Twin Cast in their hand to guard it. They're going to swing for 18. They're not going to guard this one. We'll check Amorta. They'll check a critical trigger. Then we'll swing for 23 at their Vanguard, of which they will use their Twin Cast in their drop zone to guard it. Now my opponent is going to ride into Heart Luru, and then they're going to play Toys Are Made for Children from their hand and check the top 5 cards of their deck and see if they can find any toys. They're going to find a Block Horse here, and the Block Horse is going to go into their hand. Then they will Energy Blast 3, and they're going to use Heart Luru's skill to call 3 toys out from their soul. They're going to call a Bravey Lost, a Coastal Shark, and they're going to call a Block Horse out. They do not have the Giant Fluff, which is fine for them and also fine by us. We do not want to see that big bear. They're going to use Bravey Lost as skill here, and they're going to draw a card with Counterblast 1, then rest 2 orders to put Block Horse from their drop zone to their soul, calling Philia to back row center and putting the pressure on. Coastal Shark is going to start by attacking our Sequence Wizard here, which we can't really stop. We're going to just let it go. Then it's going to stand up on its own with Soul Blast 1. Next up, Bravey Lost is going to swing for 23,000, and we kind of have to take this because we don't want to take the Bravey Lost coming in for 2 critical. We're going to get a heal trigger here, giving 10,000 power to our Vanguard, and they're going to swing for 31,000 with Heart Luru. With Counterblast 1, they're going to restand their Bravey Lost, giving it 10,000 power, and then Sparkling Bunny will follow suit, and their Vanguard is also going to gain 5,000 power. Then they're going to check a front trigger, followed by a critical trigger. That's the Toys filter for you. We're going to take 2 points of damage here as a result. We're going to check our damage triggers. We're going to check a critical trigger, giving 10,000 to our Vanguard, and check no trigger on the second one. They're going to move Philia to the soul and draw a card. Then from this position, they're going to swing 53,000 into our Vanguard. We're going to guard that with almost everything in our hand because we don't want to lose the game. And then we're going to take 33,000 to the face. Not a good look for us. Hopefully now we can swing it back. We're going to discard Amorta from our hand to ride Draconis, and then with our grade 2 skill, we're going to put 3 cards to the bottom of our deck, and we're going to draw a card. Thankfully, one of our draws for turn is Sequence Wizard. So with Sequence Wizard skill, we can check the top 5 cards of our deck, and we can call. It's not that difficult, Squaggy. Call Elmoth to the back row. Then we're going to discard Draconis and bind Gabrielius from our drop zone so that we can gain our +1 drive. Alright, let's make a miracle happen. We're going to swing with 28,000 from our Ace Unit thanks to its own skills, with Elmoth boosting it at our opponent's Vanguard. My opponent is not going to guard it here, and big surprise, it is a trigger giving 10,000 power to their Vanguard, but we're going to give 5,000 power to each of our sides thanks to our Elmoth. Then with our Vanguard skill, we're going to bind and we're going to call a Gabrielius from our deck. We're going to use Gabrielius' skill here to Soul Blast 1 and check the top card of our deck, and then we're going to put Liael to the bottom, giving 5,000 power to Gabrielius. We're going to Soul Charge 1 and give 5,000 power to Sequence Wizard. Thanks to our Dissection Angel in the back row center, they're going to have to think a bit harder to guard this turn, because if they don't guard it correctly, our Dissection Angel is going to break through with an extra 5,000 power. Here they're going to guard like this, so that it's exactly 3 to pass, even with Dissection Angel proccing. We're going to give the critical and the power to Gabrielius, and give the draw trigger power to Gabrielius too. We're going to Soul Blast 1 here so that we can proc Dissection Angel skill, then we're going to use our Divine skill to ride Draconis as a Hail Mary. Here we're going to swing with our Gabrielius, gaining 10,000 power with double critical and 1 drive check, but they're going to completely guard it. And we're not even going to check a trigger anyways. Then our Vanguard is going to swing with 1 drive, binding this in order to look at the top couple cards of our deck. And we're going to call a Gabrielius once more, because that's kind of all we have. We're going to scry the top card of our deck, and it's not going to be a trigger, so we're going to put it at the bottom and give 5,000 power to Gabrielius. Then Sequence Wizard skill is going to activate here, Soul Charging 1 and giving itself 5000 power. My opponent is going to put a giant fluff to the Guardian Circle here so that unless we check the overtrigger, we're not going to break through. Then we're going to use our Sequence Wizard here to attack for 33,000 so that our Elmore can move to the Soul so that our Gabuelas can hit a better number here. Unfortunately, they're going to check a front trigger and now Gabuelas can't hit anything, so we're just going to pass the turn. And unfortunately, it's looking a bit over after they Persona Ride, and then they're going to move a bunny to their hand, and then they're going to move a bunny and a giant fluff to their soul with the orders. With Energy Blast 3 here, they're going to make a full board yet again, and this time Giant Fluff is going to be included. Then they're going to complete their formation by putting a Sparkling Bunny to their back row center, and then checking the top 3 cards of their deck, of which they are going to put a Bravely Lost from the top 3 into their soul. A lot more filtering, we're going to get triple triggered here. You do not want to be at 5 damage on turn 4, I was hoping to heal out a little bit on their last turn. Here, Giant Fluff is going to swing for 25, and we're going to guard it with 15, and then Bravely Lost is going to swing for 33, and we're going to guard while we still can, putting us at a 36,000 on their Vanguard, of which we're going to use Liael Amorta here, discarding a Fire Regalis, and putting the 2 cards back to the bottom. They're going to check a heal trigger just to rub it in our face, and then they're going to check no trigger there. They're going to swing for 53,000, we're going to perfect guard this, and now the only hope is we check a heal trigger, or we check the over trigger, and we are going to take this hit, and that's going to be the game. Okay, you've seen the deck in action, let's inspect. I've chosen a game against a meta threat and against an aggressive strategy, showing both first and second games. So what's the good and what's the bad? First, the good. The offense of Liael is great. Especially on Divine skill turns, she's a real lethal threat. Her units hit real big numbers before your opponent is grade 3, and with the amount of filtering your deck does, you are likely to check good triggers on your triple drive. Next up, her defense is quite strong once your bind zone starts rolling. You have a lot of perfect guards, and that is useful into a lot of meta decks like Buff Sagara and Virgila with threatening center lines. Finally, her soul is now so free as a resource that you can use all her powerful rear guards to use to fight for the narrow soul easily, thanks to Sequence Wizard and Elmoth being strong ways to fuel this soul. This lets you net advantage and makes the heavy costs for triple drive seem almost too free. Okay, now the bad. The deck gets owned early game. A lot of her units are bound to Liael names, meaning you can't spam them early for pressure if you want the units to do something later, unlike decks like Buff Sagara or Toys which do have rears that do something early. Thus, you're going to be taking a ton of damage early if you're not careful mulliganing for triggers, or if you just don't check any in your defensives. Second, the deck is going to struggle a bit against Vitaya. It can build a board, but it's a little more difficult since she has very little drops or recursion. And finally, the cost. Like, the real life money cost. Right now, this deck is at about 70,000 yen, give or take right now, if you're just going to build it from scratch. This means unless you're super wealthy or you bought an Amorta core really early like I did, it's going to be a real hassle to build, which may affect its play rate in regions where people just don't have as much disposable income to spend on cardboard. So even though this deck could run rampant in CFA or Bang Pro, it may not really be that present at locals or at large-scale events if no one can afford it. As an addendum to that, EN players may not even get access to the Nebula Knights order anytime soon, making this kind of like a region-locked deck. I've left a link in the description for an EN build without the need for this order made by a super dedicated Liael player, so do check that out if the Nebula Knights order never comes to the EN format. Overall, the deck is pretty good. It's got a bit of a slow explosion like Minerva does, and she's pretty rewarding to play if you can sequence the binds and attacking well. She has some pretty interesting tools with LGL searching perfect guards, and it's great to see the 7th Faded one finally have some meta presence. Many figures online do evaluate her really highly, going as far as top 2 or top 5 decks in the format, and I really don't think she's that far off, even with some of the issues that I've highlighted. And hey, if I'm wrong about her power, then you probably don't have to take out the loan to play her. Alright, that's all from me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next YouTube short where I draw Dissection Angel on a piece of paper and try to convince my opponents to let me use it as a proxy in tourney play. Bye!